and we have not had an effective response. And so we're in this, I think, very unfortunate position where perhaps we've overestimated the value of air power in dislodging a regime, and we've underestimated the will of this group of leaders. They're battle-tested. Many of them come from our generation, so they went through the 8 years of the Iran-Iraq war, more than 1 million Iranian casualties. They're zealots, and we've not given them an exit door. President Trump's first speech on February 28th was call to the Iranian people, overthrow this regime, take to the streets. And so for them, the leaders of Iran, it became an existential battle. They were going to be killed, their families would be killed, their regime would fall if they didn't fight back, and they fought back. So what do we do now? Two big issues, and I think President Trump correctly identified the two big issues the other day in the Oval Office.
大家好，这里是嘎人四绝频道。刚才这位大使的判断听起来像是在给世界局势下结论，联合国失灵了，威权国家崛起了，中国成了美国面对过的最强对手，甚至连科技、贸易和国际秩序都被他包装成一场中美输赢之争。问题是，复杂的国际现实真能靠几句东升西降或者谁想当世界第一就解释清楚吗？一边批评别人有长期规划，一边又抱怨自己科研投入不足，一边强调和平共处，一边把竞争不断升级，这样的逻辑多少有点只许自己讲实力，不许别人谈发展。接下来的正片，我们将完整梳理这场演讲伊朗战争为何陷入僵局，乌克兰战场出现了哪些变化？为什么他把中国视为最棘手的竞争者？以及他口中的科技、关税、人口和盟友问题究竟有哪些事实？哪些只是带着立场的推断？面对这套充满焦虑的叙事，我们不妨听完全文，再看他到底是在分析世界，还是在替美国的困境寻找一个方便的解释。
80s, and they bombed our Marine barracks, the Iranians did. In 1983 and killed 260 Marines. They bombed our embassy and killed more people. 10 years later, I was in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, when the Iranians attacked our Air Force barracks, U.S. Air Force, killed more than 30 people. We visited 100 people in the hospital from our military. They produced and created Hezbollah and Hamas. They funded the Houthi rebels. This is a despicable regime. And the assumptions were on February 28th, they were vulnerable, and so we and the Israelis struck. The bet was that air power would overthrow the regime, that decapitating the leadership, starting with the death of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, the first day of the war, and if you look at the top leadership of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Basij militia, they were all taken out. And the bet was that air power alone could accomplish it. We bombed for 38 days. The Iranian regime did not change. People 2, 3, 4 levels down just simply took the places of those larger leaders, senior leaders. And then the Iranians played their big card. They shut down the Strait of Hormuz. 40% of international energy leaves from the Strait of Hormuz or through the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb, around the Arabian Peninsula. And they have cards, and they use the cards. And we have not had an effective response. And so we're in this, I think, very unfortunate position where perhaps we've overestimated the value of air power in dislodging a regime, and we've underestimated the will of this group of leaders. They're battle-tested. Many of them come from our generation, so they went through the 8 years of the Iran-Iraq war, more than 1 million Iranian casualties. They're zealots, and we've not given them an exit door. President Trump's first speech on February 28th was call to the Iranian people, overthrow this regime, take to the streets. And so for them, the leaders of Iran, it became an existential battle. They were going to be killed, their families would be killed, their regime would fall if they didn't fight back, and they fought back. So what do we do now? Two big issues, and I think President Trump correctly identified the two big issues the other day in the Oval Office. Number one, the Strait of Hormuz has to be reopened without Iran as the Tony Soprano, the toll keeper, collecting $2 to $3 million of every ship that wants to pass through. One of my students, I was teaching 100 students at Harvard Business School this semester in a course that did case studies on war and peace, so we actually just interrupted the syllabus in the course and looked at this Iran war. He said to me, well, why shouldn't the Iranians be able to collect tolls? And the answer is, it's an international waterway. Much like the Taiwan Strait, there has never been in modern history a toll keeper. It's free passage. It fuels the global economy. He said, well, how about the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal? Well, they're very different. They're inland waterways. They're owned by the governments of Panama and Egypt, so they can collect tolls. But the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb and the Red Sea, they're international waterways. We cannot allow Iran to continue to be the toll keeper. And I think the president said the other day he wouldn't let it happen. That's exactly the right way to think about it. I think he's thinking clearly about it. Our blockade is the right point of leverage. The Iranians export about 1.6 million barrels a day through the Strait of Hormuz, through the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, out to the big economies of Japan and South Korea and China and India, Indonesia. And at some point, their inability to export that oil is going to be a huge point of leverage. The question is when. And if you're thinking maybe from an American mindset, you might think, well, they're rational, and at some point the pain's going to be so severe that they're going to give in. Are they rational in the Western sense? Or will they do anything? This small group of leaders, do they really care about the 93 million Iranians who, have hyperinflation and can't live a normal life under these conditions? My bet is we're misjudging them, that we've misjudged their will. And this is a giant game of chicken, and that they believe, as they say, and the Taliban said the same thing to us when we got caught in Afghanistan, you have the watches, we have the time. They believe that they are tougher, that they can resist longer than we can because they know that we've got a problem with inflation. They know that we have midterm elections. They're smart about us. So I really worry about our ability to sustain this pressure so that we can end up with a ceasefire agreement that will make sure that the strait is open. The other big issue, of course, is the fact that they are trying to develop a nuclear weapon. I was, a long time ago, 20 years ago, for President George W. Bush, the Iran nuclear negotiator. We negotiated with them for 20 years, from my time until just the last couple of months. And what happened? They lied to us consistently about whether or not they had a program. We then uncovered, President Obama and President Trump, different aspects of that program. We caught them in the lie. They pledged not to seek a nuclear weapon. They pledged not to enrich highly enriched uranium, but they've done all those things. And so I actually supported President Trump in June of last year when he and the Israelis struck at the 3 major nuclear research centers in Iran, because I figured 20 years of diplomacy, they lied and cheated, the diplomacy never really succeeded. We should use surgical strikes, not against civilians, not against power stations, not against water systems, not to hurt the civilians of Iran, but the government of Iran. I thought that was correct. And there's about 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium under the rubble from June 2025, those bombings. And another key issue for President Trump, and I think he's right about this, we got to make sure the Iranians don't get access to that. So that would mean some kind of ceasefire agreement where the strait is open, no toll keeper, and the International Atomic Energy Agency, and we trust that UN agency, has 24/7 eyes on that rubble and the 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium, because you need that at about 70 to 80% purification to be able, with a nuclear warhead and a ballistic missile, that's your nuclear weapon. That's what we have to prevent. This is a really tough problem. And I think my Dan and Andy, I'd guess that a lot of us hoped, and I think the president hoped, this war would end in a week or two. Here we are on May 1. I'd be very surprised if we resolve this by June. We may be in this for a couple of more months because we're dealing with a group of people who are not on our time. World of disorder, Iran, huge problem. Putin. Why have we become Putin's lawyer? Why have we deserted Vladimir Zelensky and the Ukrainian people? That's where we are. And I think if you polled 340 million Americans, are we for Ukraine or Russia? I think I know who wins that. If you polled every Republican in Congress, secret poll, I think we know how they would vote. You have this valiant group of people, 54 million Ukrainians, who were attacked. And you remember the first day? Everybody, including me, felt the Russians' armored column would roll into Kiev, take down the government, execute Zelensky and his advisors, and just kill the country, kill the Ukrainian nation. Remember what happened that first day? At dawn, Zelensky, with an iPhone and 4 or 5 of his guys around him, he said in Ukrainian to the Ukrainian people, "I'm here. I did not flee. We're going to fight back." A lot of people think now, this was a Wall Street Journal reflection last weekend, is he now the leader of the West? And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I really don't. I'm not trying to politicize this towards President Trump or anybody else. But who else has stood up for democracy, for freedom, more than Zelensky and his associates over the last 4 years and 3 months of this terrible war? 7 or 8 million Ukrainian refugees. Our oldest daughter, Sarah, lives in Berlin and has been working with Ukrainian refugees. Men and women dying in battle for their country. And until 15 months ago, we were supporting Ukraine. Now Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner so voluntarily give up part of your national territory. And quite correctly, Zelensky said no. What's the new conventional wisdom? Well, the old was, Ukraine's going to lose the war. It can't resist the Russian army. Here's the new conventional wisdom. Talk to any military analyst over the last 3 or 4 months. Ukraine is now winning on the battlefield because of what Dan mentioned. AI-enabled drone technology, sophisticated missiles, striking at Russian oil and gas facilities, striking at the export facilities up on the Baltic Sea near St. Petersburg, draining Russian economic power. And so the Ukrainians now are ahead in the war. They're the side we should root for, and yet we are still trying to coerce them into a deal that nobody should expect, to give up their national territory. I don't get it. And I'll bet the majority of Americans don't get it either. I hope there's a change of heart. I really hope there's a reconsideration. Mitch McConnell's been so courageous.
这场演讲表面上是一场金融会议上的国际形势讨论，实际上抛出了一个更沉重的问题：当旧有秩序开始松动，企业、国家和每一个普通人到底该怎样理解风险，又该怎样寻找方向？伯恩斯的核心判断很明确，世界正在从一个相对有规则、可预期的阶段，走向一个更混乱、更碎片化的阶段。过去几十年里，国际组织、贸易体系、联盟关系和基本规则虽然从不完美，却像一道道护栏，让各国知道什么可以做，什么不能做，也让市场能够据此规划未来。但今天，战争、关税、技术封锁、能源通道危机、阵营对抗，正在不断冲击这些护栏。这意味着地缘政治不再只是外交官和军事专家的议题，它会进入油价，进入供应链，进入企业投资，进入科技研发，也会进入每个人的就业、消费和财富预期。过去市场习惯于把地缘冲突当成短期波动，认为几天之后就会恢复交易节奏。但现实越来越说明，有些风险不是一根曲线能够解释的，也不是单靠提高波动率就能覆盖的。他们会改变规则本身。伊朗问题提醒我们，军事力量并不必然等于政治结果。空中打击可以摧毁目标，却未必能摧毁一个政权的组织能力、意志和替代体系。霍尔木兹海峡的风险也说明，现代世界看似拥有庞大的经济体量，实际上依然高度依赖少数关键航道、能源节点和物流通路。一旦这些地方被卡住，冲击就会迅速传导到全球。乌克兰战争则让人看到，决定一场战争走向的不只是传统兵力规模、无人机。 人工智能、远程精确打击、工业产能和社会韧性都在重新定义战场。更重要的是，一个国家能否在危机中获得持续支持，往往取决于它有没有可靠的朋友、稳定的联盟以及值得被捍卫的价值。这也是演讲中最值得反复思考的一点。美国真正的优势从来不只是军力、美元或科技公司，更包括大学、科研机构、创业企业、盟友网络和吸引全球人才的能力。这些力量彼此连接，才构成了一个国家长期竞争力的底座。只强调短期利益，却忽视教育、科研、制度信誉和伙伴关系，最后损失的可能是最难重建的信任。谈到中国时，演讲没有把问题简单化。中美之间确实存在长期结构性的竞争，竞争涉及安全、科技、贸易和国际影响力。但竞争不等于失控，更不等于必须走向冲突。两个拥有巨大经济规模、全球影响力和先进武器的国家最重要的任务之一，就是在竞争中保持沟通，在分歧中建立护栏，在必要领域继续合作。尤其在人工智能、量子计算、生物技术、网络安全和太空技术快速发展的今天，真正危险的未必只是某一次对抗，而是误判、失控和缺乏对话。技术越强大，人类越需要克制；国家越强大，越需要理解规则和合作的价值。演讲最后留下的希望同样值得重视。希望不是假装看不见风险，也不是相信困难会自动消失。真正的希望是承认问题的复杂，仍然愿意投入教育、科学、创新和公共服务，是在秩序受冲击时依旧愿意维护基本事实。制度约束与人的尊严，对普通人来说，我们未必能左右国际格局，但可以提升判断力。不被情绪化叙事牵着走，可以理解科技、经济与地缘政治之间越来越紧密的联系，也可以关注那些真正决定未来的长期投入，比如人才、研发、开放、合作和社会信任。世界正在变化，而且变化不会停止，但越是在不确定的时代，越需要清醒、耐心和远见。你怎么看这场关于秩序、竞争与希望的演讲？欢迎在评论区留下你的观点，也欢迎点赞订阅。